Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Kristen Weardon Show. I'm so excited that you could join us today because we have an amazing guest from LA, outside of our normal sphere. Usually we do Naples and the surrounding areas, but I love to bring in people from out of town when they can join us. Today we have Jamie Winterstern from, let me see, it's SwipeMarket is the name of your company, right?
Yes.
But you are also a producer, director. Tell us
all the above.
Right?
Yeah.
So I met you at the Naples Film Festival recently, so I'm so happy you could join us, where I saw your movie Sanibel. But tell me, like, how did this whole film career start?
So originally I'm from Montreal.
Okay.
I was born and raised in Canada, and then when I finished high school, I knew I wanted to be in film. I applied to a bunch of film schools, any school in the States, because that was where I knew the hub for cinema was. And I had terrible SAT scores. I got into one out of, I think, 11 schools I applied to, which was Whittier College in East LA. So I knew at least I had a place to go in California. And then from there, I was able to transfer. From there, I transferred to Pepperdine. And then eventually, after I think a third try to get into USC Film School, I finally got in as a junior. And then I was able to finish up at USC Film School. And that began my journey in LA, which spanned about 21 years. And then recently, I just moved to Florida because I love it here.
That's right. That's right. You said you were coming to Florida. I love that. Hey, I love it every time somebody wants to come to the great state of Florida. Having done real estate for 32 years, I kind of plug our state a lot. So you that was perseverance that got you really into your choice of film schools.
Yes.
So you must have that as a filmmaker.
Oh, yeah.
You have to, when you have a project.
You know, it's funny because I think back, so I probably got into it when I was an 8-year-old and 10-year-old. I remember my dad would always stay up late. My mom would put me to bed, and I'd always hear muffled noises coming from the basement. So after, I don't know, 15 minutes, I would sneak out of my room, go down to the basement, and my dad would be laying on the couch with a Diet Coke, popcorn, some sort of snack, and he'd be watching a movie. And he never, he didn't mind me watching the films with him, but I was watching advanced movies for an 8-year-old. I'm watching Planet of the Apes, and we're talking Charlton Heston, the original, Schindler's List. We're like iconic movies for adults, but I was a kid, so I wasn't thinking about the story. I was just focused on the technical aspect of how they were made. Okay. And one filmmaker who stood out to me was Steven Spielberg, and how he uses the camera to tell story, how he moves the camera, how he uses lights to help inform everything about like what you're seeing and how you're supposed to feel. And that's why I knew I want to go to USC Film School, because that was the place.
So after college, where did we go? I know you directed a TV, but then you ended up in film. But how did all this start after school?
So I picked a trade, editing. I faked it to make it, essentially. So I loved editing. I loved putting the story together. Well, once you shoot it, you go in, use the software, and you start cutting the story together, and that's where you layer in the music, you color it, you add like effects, and the story really comes together in the editing room. And I was pretty good at editing. So out of school, I knew, well, I'm not going to be able to direct right out of college. It's very rare for someone to get that responsibility, but what I can do is I can get hired as an editor. So I was brought on by a company to edit, and I actually helped a showrunner edit his first feature film, and that film was called Shadow People. I think I was the third editor, and it was a stressful experience because he wanted me to use Avid, which is a specific software, and I was accustomed to Final Cut. So in my first interview with him, I was like, yeah, I have all these great ideas of how I want to recut this movie and make it great for you. And he's like, okay, well, let's get started. And I had trouble opening up the software, but he was so, I think he loved my enthusiasm, and that he figured I can pretty much learn how to use the software. So editing is what got me started in terms of work. And then through his relationship, he showran Siberia, which ended up being acquired by NBC. And through that avenue, I got hired to direct 6 of the episodes.
Oh, that's
So
incredible.
I was able to use that current to get on set and get, at 28 years old, that was my first real on-set experience as a director, which was surreal.
I can see how editing though can lead to that, because you're seeing the finished product
Yeah.
in the editing, but then on the directing side you can almost see as the editor, like, they would have just done this over here.
They say that the best directors are editors, right?
Okay.
When you walk onto set, you're seeing shots. And if you have an editing background or a sensibility, the coverage you need to put together a powerful scene. So you're already editing. When I write with a partner, I'm already shooting it as I'm writing it and editing it. It's all happening in my head. And it'll always change. Like the screenplay will always be different in production,
Mm.
and then it will always be a different type of movie in post. And the purpose is you can't get too attached. You kind of just have to like organically evolve, and whatever you end up with might be very different from what you started with. But as long as there's like an essence of what like the main theme was or the story you're trying to tell, that's what's important.
So tell us about your surreal experience on set with directing those
Oh,
episodes.
so I felt the pressure of directing. Being on set and having 50, 70 people just standing, and you're the one calling the shots like a general, like as if this is the military, right? And uh, it, there's so many decisions you have to make on the day, and time is everything. You only have 12 and a half hours in a shoot day, and you have so much you have to get done that, every decision has to be made has to be prompt. The thing that I think my mistake was on my first experience was I would rush my thinking, and I would maybe make miscalculated decisions because I wanted to get the information out quick, instead of what I would say is to slow down, to speed up, is take 5 minutes, think it through, and make the correct decision so that you don't have to, I don't know, pick up the pieces later, or you find yourself in the editing room and you didn't get the right coverage because you kind of rushed through the moment. So I learned through that experience to slow down under pressure so you don't make those, quick mistakes.
That actually sounds like a great life experience and life lesson too that people can take, even
Yes.
if they're not in filmmaking.
Oh, you can apply that to anything.
I mean, as a parent, as a business person, CEO, starting anything.
Patience. And I still have to practice that because I am an impatient person. So it's like a constant battle for me. But especially on set, you need to have tremendous patience, and just know that you know the story. And if you're very intimate with it, you're going to make the right decisions. You don't have to think too much about it. Also, over preparation, which was a thing I learned on the next big opportunity, which was my first feature. That was what I learned on that film, was you can be over prepared.
So tell us, what was the next feature?
So there was a gap. I was 28. I did it was an NBC primetime series. It was really exciting, and I didn't have anything to follow up with. I thought once you made something, all the gates open.
They were like, "Here, come get me."
I'm gonna get repped. I'm gonna get agents and managers, and like they'll just start throwing projects at me. And no, you are responsible for your own success. It doesn't matter how big you get. You always have to have the next thing ready, and I wasn't ready. So there was about a 6-7 year gap where I went into what became SwipeMarket and my marketing company. But after that time, I knew I had to make a movie. I was never going to be fulfilled because that was my lifelong dream as a kid, was to make a movie. And that became Supercell, which is a storm chasing movie starring Alec Baldwin and Anne Heche. And that came out a year ago, and it's on Hulu. And it did pretty good. It was #1 on Hulu last summer, 2 summers ago.
I saw that and I was like, oh, it's big time now. So you started your marketing company and SwipeMarket. Was that to fill the gap or to learn how to market, or both?
It was You know, funny enough, the NBC opportunity it did not pay well
Mm,
because the way it was done was we had made the show independently
mm,
and then it was acquired
yeah,
after the fact. It wasn't like I was getting network money.
right.
So at 28, I was just focused on I want to start making real money. I want to start getting an income. And I just so happened through some networking or relationships, got introduced to a startup in Silicon Valley that, they're doing industrial style marketing
Mm,
for big technology, which isn't so fascinating to me. But there was a lot of money
right.
that they were going to pay me. And I said, you know what if I take my entertainment sensibilities and apply it to a tech startup?
Mm,
And that's when I started realizing, wow, I can do my storytelling. And the way I put it is I walk into any office and I find my Dwight, I find my Michael Scott, and I start creating this fun in-office type of content. And you can apply that to any, I guess, business in
right.
terms of the marketing, because my mantra when I did the marketing company, it's not about the product, it's about the people behind the product. And if you can sell them, then you're going to sell what they're selling.
Well, you're immediately building relationships.
Exactly. And so that became my focus for a while. I was like, okay, I'm making more money than I did in television, I guess, and nothing was coming out of, the window was fleeting. I had had the NBC show, and I was like, oh my God, I've done it. And then 6 months go by, and there was no follow up. And then after a year, it's as if it never happened. And
Mm,
it was
and that's the industry.
that is it's a sad truth. So you always have to have a lot of things cooking. So I had to pivot, and I realized, well, I have something special with this marketing thing I'm doing up
Right.
in Silicon Valley, so I'm going to pursue that. And that became my thing until I came
Super
to a
so.
point when I was like, I have to make a movie.
So how did you pivot back into the industry at that point? I
Well,
mean, I think you were kind of always in it, but
sort of, it's as
like
if I
a
had to.
elbow or an arm still out there.
Well, I knew the ingredients, and it's kind of like I had to start over.
Mm,
After so much time, you really have to build off momentum. But I knew that I had to write something, and I don't like writing. I can write, I love directing. To me, writing is what I have to do in order to direct. So I knew that it happened in 2019, and this is after my mother was sick. Um, I wanted to go storm chasing with my wife, just because I've always been connected to nature and I love the weather. So, having gone through a storm chasing experience, I realized after doing that that there was a movie in that, and that I hadn't seen any movie about storm chasing since 1996, which was
mm,
Twister.
right.
And at that point, I was like, I finally have a story that I could fight for, that I want to write, that I want to pursue as a director, and it has everything to do with this community of storm chasers. So then the way I approached it is, well, I'm going to start calling all of the people I went to film school with, see
Mm,
who's willing to help me out. I found a tremendous writing partner in Anna Elizabeth James, who was the co-writer of Supercell, and I followed her lead in terms of how to write a producible script. And I remember I flew to Utah, where she lived at the time, and we did a 1 week boot camp where we wrote, I think, 15 to 20 pages a day.
wow.
And we finished the first draft's never good, but we finished a first draft in a week. And then from there, I was able to build on that and finally have a screenplay that I could say, this will be my first movie.
See, I don't think people listening or watching understand what goes into writing.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot that goes into the
Yeah,
writing.
so much.
And then it doesn't even always, hopefully it, like you said, it has the essence of at the end time. So you do this great movie, Supercell.
Hmm.
And so what happens next? Tell us on that journey. Like, I'm so enthralled right now. I don't even know, like, the questions. I'm like, what about the questions?
Oh, you're saying from like making a movie like
Yeah,
Supercell.
so how did, like, you get on set, you get through this movie. What is the end result of the movie? Is it like the beginning of the movie had you hoped? Did it
You know,
working on that kind of a bigger set? What, like, tell me about that experience.
it was bittersweet. You spend your whole life dreaming about doing something, and then you finally do it,
Mhm.
and it's never really I guess, magical as you always thought
Right.
it was.
Yeah.
And that's a hard reality. There was a little bit of, I don't know if I want to call it depression, but once the movie came out, and it was my sole focus for 4 years to make that movie.
Yeah.
And this is where I think it's important to have a lot of things going on, because when you focus on one thing, you can suffocate it. And I think because it was just the one thing that I had
Mm.
going, I was way too precious with it. And I think as a film and what I set out to achieve, I succeeded at. I made an enjoyable throwback film that reminds a lot of people of like the 80s cinema. If you see it, it feels like a Ron Howard, Zemeckis, Spielberg movie.
Oh, fun.
But I was so focused on emulating that, my childhood film experience, that I forgot to tell my own story and
Okay.
to use my own filmmaking voice to make a movie. And to me, that was my failure. So now, moving on, my next project is I want to tell a Jamie Winterstern story. I want it to feel like my thumbprint and not the cover band of Steven Spielberg. And that is an important driving force as I move forward.
It sounds like almost you went with the expectation of the industry and
Yeah.
the dream
Hmm.
versus when Ron Howard does a film, he's putting his essence of what he feels
Right.
in that filmmaking moment.
Everyone has influences, and it's important to have influence. I think if you think of Steven Spielberg, you go back to Hitchcock, you go back to David Lean. You can go back to what inspires you, but you have to be able to tell it through your own lens. And I think I was maybe slightly more focused on style over substance, which is okay, because when you think of, lighthearted popcorn movies,
Yeah.
genre films, people aren't really going there to think hard. They're going there to escape reality.
Right.
So it serves its purpose. But now, as I focus on the next film, I have, the documentary, which is a lot more deeper character-wise and emotional. I think about a film that I'm set up to direct in the spring, which is an indie drama about a young man returning home to help his grandmother bury his grandfather, only to find out she has terminal cancer. And now I'm dealing with more human substance that I think I'm going to be able to find my own energy in, and let my knowledge of filmmaking and the technical aspect just kind of breathe through me instead of leading with it.
So you mentioned documentaries. So then we go from Supercell to Sanibel,
Yes.
which is where I met you at the film festival. You sold out all 3 showings of Sanibel.
Oh, yeah, I was very excited.
So that was great. And
It was
then hearing
awesome.
you talk about it, but we have to know, what made you say, I want to do the movie Sanibel? I want to go, and what did I say? The seashell culture.
Yeah.
What made you say, I want to learn more about this culture and share it with people?
So I go back to my mom, because and it's funny because these 2 films have everything to do with my experiences with my mother when I was a kid. And it was always nature as the theme. So I would always stay up watching thunderstorms. So we would travel to Florida often as snowbirds from Montreal. And the 2 activities I would do with my mom is I would watch lightning at night over the ocean.
Okay.
And we would go walk the beaches and pick up seashells. And both of those things I would find therapeutic, right? You don't think about anything when you do those activities. And coming to Florida as an adult, and I guess rekindling that experience with the ocean and the shoreline, and learning about, wow, these are the best beaches to shell on planet Earth, I just became an avid seasheller. So it started.
So you were a seasheller.
Yes, and it always starts with personal experience with me, because then if I feel it, then I could speak to it, and then I could perhaps make a movie about it. So it came from just my own interest in shelling, and I discovered Sanibel not as, oh, this is a destination to make a movie, just as my own desire to go to the Mecca of seashelling.
I love that. The Mecca of seashelling. It
Yeah.
is. It truly is. I mean, I've grown up here since '78, and there's a few places you can go, but Sanibel is the place to go. And I love how in the movie, for those of you out there, you have to see the movie. We'll tell you where you can. But you even described why it is in the
Yeah.
movie because of where it is and the shape and this how the
So
currents
it's a
go.
Yeah, so Sanibel's the way it rests on the Gulf is most of the coastline goes north-south, but Sanibel is like this bucket that is facing east-west. So the way the currents kind of wash up on the coast with this very gradual undulation of topography under the water, these very rare, beautiful specimens of seashells just like roll up onto the beaches there. Um, and that's
Piles.
piles. However, and I want to be fair to say that what people are realizing is that the 10,000 islands south of Marco has become the new Mecca because you can't walk there. You have to take boat there.
Yeah, you have to get a boat.
So they're not overpicked, those beaches. And that's become more of a hub for shelling today.
Ah, so we have a little inside tip out there.
Yes.
I love that. But then right after you finished filming, the hurricane happened.
Well, no. So
Or was it during?
it was during.
Oh,
What the whole story was basically on the pretense that I was doing research for a narrative feature about shells. I had this idea of doing a thriller about seashells. I thought it would be a nice spin on something that everyone has a relationship to. So my business partner and I, Kevin, he said he didn't want to be left out because Supercell, he thought, well, we could have done a lot of good preparation work on the storm chasing thing and maybe made a documentary about that before you made your movie. On this one, let's have SwipeMarket produce something around seashells. So initially it was just research into the culture of shell collecting in and around Sanibel. But 6 weeks into filming, Hurricane Ian formed over the Straits of Cuba and made landfall in Sanibel, in the very place we had shot the most beautiful footage of, the community house, the lighthouse, the Island Inn, all of these,
iconic
places.
Iconic, yeah.
And now they were gone. So 2 weeks later, because of our relationships with the residents and Emily, who was kind of our lead cast member, she was able to get us a pass, and we went on island and we saw the devastation as fresh as anyone would have been who was there.
And you just documented the way it was just weeks before.
And what was hard to believe was I was able to pretty much go to the same POV vantage with the camera, weeks apart from category basically 5 landfall to nothing, like to prior, and it was the worst devastation I've ever witnessed with my own eyes. To me, the way I compare it, if you're familiar with the Boxing Day tsunami in Thailand, 2004, it felt like a tsunami moved through the island. It was complete devastation.
Yeah, I went through Ian here in Naples, and that's when I lost my house. But here in Naples, we have a lot newer construction, so even if it flooded, it might have stayed. But when you got up to the Fort Myers, Sanibel area, there are older communities, a lot of frame, and they just could not withstand that.
And they're not built up over the flood, I guess, zones.
Floodplain, yeah. You'll learn more about that as you live in Florida.
Yeah.
What's my elevation? That's the big question everybody asks
nowadays. What's the flood zone?
What's my elevation? What flood zone am I in? So what do you feel, besides the obvious devastation, what did you feel like was the most profound thing that you experienced after coming back to see Sanibel?
It was the attitude of the people, the residents. It was the human story of the subjects. So, I mean, just to name off, like Emily Miller, who was a trolley driver for Adventures in Paradise, Judy Bierman, who owns Island Gifts, Larry Strange, who owns seashells.com, and Jaffe, she sells seashells. These are iconic legacy family-owned businesses that have been around for like generations. And their attitudes, of course, they were dealing with loss and grief, but they just had so much pride that nothing was going to deter them from rebuilding. And I think that attitude was so inspirational. And knowing that nothing's permanent, like everyone goes through loss, everyone goes through grief, but like everything's cyclical. So that will soon pass. And watching their attitudes, and really a lot of these people who had very little to begin with, lost pretty much everything.
Yeah.
The fact that they can still smile and laugh was profound.
You could see that in the part of the film where they set up their like tent shops out front of their pretty much devastated shops
Yeah.
in the film, and how they came together. And I thought it really, in the film, it really showed that sense of community,
Hmm.
that they were definitely going to make a run at rebuilding.
Yeah, like I said, a lot of these family-owned businesses that operate on Sanibel, I mean, they're just unbelievable human beings, and they need to survive by having tourists come to their island.
Yeah.
So for them, it's a means for survival, and that's what I love about Sanibel is it's not franchise. It's not you're not going to get a Marriott hotel or McDonald's.
No,
I
you got to
mean,
go across the bridge.
they don't even have street lights because they're so aware of the environment for the sea
Sea
turtles.
turtles, yeah.
So
It's
it's just
definitely an island.
it is.
Completely run
It
like an
is.
island.
It's really special, and that's the reason why I named my daughter's middle name after the island, Sanibel.
Oh, I
Yeah.
did not know that. That's interesting. Well, and that means she'll probably have lots of resilience. 'Cause that's what I think of after I saw the movie.
Like a
Was,
seashell.
yeah. See, we're right back to the essence of the movie.
Exactly.
Yeah, I love that. So what are you hoping that the audiences take away from watching this movie, Sanibel?
Hope. And like I said before, grief and loss does not last forever. And just having seen Helene and Milton
Mhm.
kind of come through and seeing what's going on in the Carolinas, and just knowing what they're going through, it's just knowing that bad things happen
Yeah.
to everyone, and you can't let that define you. And I think what's special about the movie is you see it through the eyes of the characters, that they're not going to let it define them.
Yeah, no, they're not. And having met a few of them at the screening you did for the film festival, wow, amazing people. Just you could see this is my community. This is like the salt of Sanibel that you brought out in screen, like big screen.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, that was important.
So you're going to be doing more screenings. Tell us some of the other things about Sanibel that I might not have thought about in my questions.
So we're very fortunate. Paragon Theaters in North Naples is going to run the movie for a week, starting January 10th through 16th. There'll be 2 showtimes a day, which we're grateful for. So if you haven't seen the film at the film festival, you'll be able to see it next month at Paragon Theaters locally. And after that, we're just keeping our fingers crossed that we can hopefully land a deal with a streamer, some sort of platform, so that it could be available for anyone to rent or download, which we're sure it's going to happen. It's just a matter of who, when, and with who.
Right.
But yeah, just having it premiere at Naples and to win the Best Florida Film Award was really an honor.
Well, you really did capture what a good part of what Florida is. It's not just Disneyland.
No.
These are communities along the coast. It's a very coastal state. I mean, we're surrounded on 3 sides by water. We're a true peninsula. And when you watch the film, having grown up here, I remember when parts of Naples or Marco were exactly like that. It's been a little bit more developed, but there's still a lot of parts of Florida that are just these homespun, enjoyable communities that tourists go to. They rely on the dollars. We're a big tourist state. But a lot of people think of Florida and they just think Disney.
Yeah.
And Sanibel definitely captured it. So winning that award was like, for me, it was a no-brainer when I saw the film.
I love Florida. It's funny because people, like you say, like today, especially how political the country's become over the last few years, you say Florida and it's like people discount that. And it's like culture, what? Florida culture? No, Florida has its own culture, and I find it's just fascinating to me. And I want to tell more stories in Florida. I love the barrier island feeling, and just the fact that people own golf carts and drive golf carts from A to B, and that humidity at night where you can wear t-shirt and shorts and there's lizards everywhere and dragonflies. It's just, there's something magical about like Florida, West Coast Florida culture that I'm not done.
Well, that's great to hear. We look forward to more, that's for sure. So I want to pivot back to SwipeMarket. So SwipeMarket produced this film, or
Yes.
okay? So what does SwipeMarket do? Let's talk about the CEO part of you, because all these hats you're juggling. I want to know more.
So originally, yeah, Swipe Market's kind of had to evolve. So what's fascinating is Swipe Market was originally focused on micro ads for social media, because when we started, which was 2013, Instagram was just allowing for 15-second video.
Okay.
And it was a way for brands to advertise on social when they weren't able to before, hence Swipe Market, which was, since then we've been able to pivot to just tech companies, because most of the work we have done originally and our early partners was in Silicon Valley, and helping tell complicated product stories in more of an entertainment means through character and good storytelling, which is what my background is. But now it's, we've become very good at documenting real human beings and making them feel like characters, which is really one step into documentary filmmaking.
Yeah.
So it made sense for, my partner and I to do a feature-length documentary.
It sounds like SwipeMarket has always been about people.
Yes.
It's always been about people. This is
People
just
first.
another arm.
Yeah, and it's funny because I find people fascinating, right? Anybody, it doesn't matter where they're from, what they do, there's always a character in every human being, and to find like that archetype is what keeps me going on the business side of the,
Right.
yeah.
So it sounds like too that your mom had a big influence on your nature part of it, but then there's also an Alzheimer's aspect in your life. Do you mind sharing a little bit of that with us?
Yeah.
Because that's also part of this deep storytelling, I think, that you have with people.
So I had a very great childhood, growing up in Montreal, and my parents being, around and emotionally available, and having siblings. Like I was very fortunate. I can't complain about anything. And, I guess it was 10 years ago, my mom, who was very young, I think 50 years old, started showing signs of early onset Alzheimer's. And it started, if you know Alzheimer's, the younger you get it, the quicker it just escalates. And we lost her when I think she was 58 or 59. The experience made me more spiritual as a person. It started having me ask more of those existential questions about what is life, meaning of it, the purpose, where do we go when we die, will I see my mom again? And that has been the entry point into my heart and the stories that I want to tell. And I guess that's what you would call the grief, how to deal with grief. And I found personally the way I deal with grief is observing nature, whether it's storm chasing or seashelling. That's how I've been able to deal with it. And that's kind of how going through that experience has shaped me as an artist.
It's definitely made an impact from childhood through the nature, but now you're continuing it because you all your compliments to Florida were all nature driven.
Yes.
The humidity,
Yeah.
the dragonflies, the lizards. I know when my daughter walks outside, she looks at the lizards and she starts screaming. And I'm like, you were born here, child. You're 27 years old.
Yeah, my daughter is like chasing them into the shrubs.
And each kid has their own little.
Yeah.
I'm like, you grew up with them. Why do you hate them? And here your daughter's like, oh, let me catch one, which comes in handy when they get in the house.
Yeah.
So train them young, because then they don't scream when there's one in the shower. She's like, come get this. I'm like, really? It's a lizard. But it's interesting to see how much you see of nature. I think we live in Florida, and we just, because we work here, we live here.
Take it for granted.
We kind of take it for granted. And then there's some days where I'm on a walk and I have a lake near me, and every once in a while an alligator will sneak in there, and some people freak out, and I'm like, oh, the best, if you ever, I don't know if you've done this. Have you done an Everglades tour?
I've pet the baby ones.
Oh, really? Okay.
My daughter hasn't done that, and that might be something we put on the bucket list.
When she gets a little older. If you ever get a chance to go out with someone who can get you really back in the Everglades, not on the tour part, I went and saw they have airboat races and all kinds of stuff out there. It's a very small community, because eventually those camps will not be allowed to be renewed as of right now. So they can't be passed on or anything. When they go, that's it. But when I was out there, it's a whole, you really do kind of go, wow.
Hmm.
And you can really see stuff in Florida that as somebody who lives here, you forget. And I don't know, I have to remember that to look at the
Yeah,
nature.
always. Just
Always look.
look at the Gulf when it's placid like a lake. That's the
Yeah,
thing. The summer times.
that's so rare too. It's only in
Yeah.
the morning. Because if you
Yeah.
go look in the morning when the sun comes up, it's smooth. If you
Hmm.
come back at like 2 o'clock, it's got some wave to it, even on this side.
So, and I know winter is high season, summer is low season, but for me, summer is the time to go. I don't mind the heat, but just like just speaking of nature, that's when you're getting monsoon season. That's when you're getting these beautiful
Hmm.
cumulonimbus clouds. Every night there's a light show over the
Yeah.
ocean. So there's just so much going on in the summertime, which I enjoy.
My mother used to call them God's fireworks, so I
Yeah,
wouldn't be
that's
afraid.
what we say. Yeah.
Yeah. So I wouldn't be afraid of the thunder and lightning.
Hmm.
So if you were, in closing, if you were going to give any advice to aspiring filmmakers,
Yes.
where would you direct them to start, or what advice would you give them?
Well, it's funny. Film school is always a great avenue just because it's not necessarily what you learn, but it's practicing. The practicing is important. So, I guess having said that, it's relatively affordable to get a camera. Now, of course, everyone's got a smartphone and the ability, like these phones can really shoot amazing things. If it's your phone or if it's a DSLR camera, which is basically kind of like a Canon with interchangeable lenses, it's important just to start practicing and fail. Don't get too caught up on not doing it until you're ready or
Mm.
it's perfect. You just got to do it and fail and practice and keep doing it. Jordan Peele, who's one of the most iconic filmmakers today. You've seen the movie Nope, Get Out,
Hmm.
Us. He had a whole comedy series called Key and Peele, and he has, I don't know, 200 skits that he directed and starred in.
Huh.
And if you think about it, it makes sense why he's such a successful director, because he's made hundreds of shorts. And that's the thing is just, I would say, just do it. And it may not be good for the first 5, 10, but eventually you're going to get over that. And it's all about building confidence and also about being comfortable, being uncomfortable. Because that's
Mm.
the thing. People like to always be safe and try and stay in that state. No. Being an artist is very uncomfortable. Directing a movie is very uncomfortable. And as long as you can like just accept that, nothing can phase you.
Get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Exactly.
Another great life lesson, of course,
Yeah.
because if you stay in your comfort zone, I don't think you grow either.
No.
So
Oh, yeah.
exactly what you're saying is, it might take 10, it might take 15. I mean, when we first started, the first one, you asked me how my first episode was.
Yeah.
And, considering it was the first one, I was like, not bad. Has it improved? Yeah, by now, thank
Yeah.
goodness. But even if it hadn't, it's just keep going at it, keep trying, keep going at it.
Exactly.
If it's something you're truly passionate about.
That's the thing. And if you really truly love it, you're going to keep doing it. If not, you're going to do something else. It's not as complicated, I think, as people may think.
Well, that's good to know.
Yeah.
That'll hopefully inspire some of our
Yeah.
aspiring filmmakers out there. Thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate you taking the time to be on our show and come on our set.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you so much to our audience for joining us today. It's been a pleasure doing the interview. It's been great having our audience here today. Remember to like, follow, share so we can have more amazing, captivating, and interesting guests like Jamie today. And you have a great day. Life is a journey filled with challenges, but those challenges don't have to hold you back. They can be stepping stones to something greater, a life of hope, joy, and purpose. Hi, I'm Kristen Weardon, and my passion is helping you unlock your inner potential. No matter what your past may look like, your past does not need to define your future. Whether you're recovering from a difficult relationship or trying to overcome the challenges of your backstory, I'm here to guide you every step of the way. I offer a range of services tailored to fit your unique needs, everything from one-on-one coaching, group coaching, to foundation building challenges, and even accountability check-ins. Together, we can create a path that leads you to the future you deserve.